It's time for another blistering report from the front lines of the cultural war for a constitutional America. And now, here's your host, Charles Benninghoff.
Today, we have a subject that should make every tax-paying American very angry. Every single year, there are an estimated 100,000 federal employees with seriously delinquent tax bills that add up to more than $1 billion. A billion. When you add in civilian government contractors, defense contractors, and federal grant recipients, like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, the number jumps up to about $8 billion a year in unpaid taxes. And because of public sector labor union rules, none of the federal employees who are tax scofflaws can be fired. And if you never heard the term scofflaw, it means somebody, well, in this case, who doesn't pay their taxes. You pay your taxes, and in order for you to pay your taxes, you got to pull deep into your pocket. But you know what? They don't pay their taxes, and they don't make any effort to pay their taxes. They don't dig in their pocket whatsoever. Yet they keep their jobs year in, year out. They know they can't be fired because public sector labor union bosses have bribed politicians to get protection. Well, they call it political contributions, but it's just a bribe. Pay your politician fees for your advertisements, and you make sure you cover the back of my public sector labor union employees. And it's a vicious cycle, especially when the Democrats are involved. And this is where the bottom of this protection can be found. And you know what? That should make every taxpayer mad enough to speak out about this. Why should federal union goons be allowed to skip out on paying their taxes and continue collecting a salary from the taxpayers? And in just a minute, I'll tell you how big those salaries are. Well, Congressman Jason Chaffetz, a Republican of Utah, has introduced the Tax Accountability Act of 2017, which is designated as H.R. 396. You know, President Trump says he wants to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C. Well, the Tax Accountability Act is a tool that will help make that happen. I'll tell you about H.R. 396 today, and I'll let you know how you can help get this passed and help America. First, let's talk about how bad this problem is. Well, believe it or not, even the IRS has employees who skip out on their taxes. The Inspector General found that between 2004 and 2013, many IRS employees who were caught willfully not paying their taxes received promotions, raises, and bonuses. It's nearly impossible for a federal agency to file a public sector labor union member, even if they have a massive delinquent tax debt. Here is Congressman Jason Chaffetz talking about this issue on the House floor. Take a look.
We just heard testimony from the DEA. I can't fire anybody, even though they were engaged in some very nefarious activities. We've heard the administrator of the EPA say, I can't let anybody go, even though the person was watching 4 hours of porn a day. 4 hours a day, they couldn't fire him. Let's give them some latitude, because we have a test case. It's worked. We want tax compliance.
Can you believe that? You pay the salaries of employees at the Environmental Protection Agency who sit at their desk, and some of them watch pornography for half their workday. They can't be fired. Federal employees know they can't be fired. That's why we need to demand that Congress pass H.R. 396. Indeed, the Washington Post recently wrote, Trump, and I quote, Trump has said that reducing the size of the federal workforce, better known by its government or acronym RIF, reduction in force, is a top priority. This may not be as easy as Trump would like. Laying off federal workers requires going through a formal process that can be lengthy, expensive, and disruptive to the workplace, experts say. And various legal and union rights may come into play, as they do for the similarly complex process of firing a federal worker for misconduct. Close quote. Jeffrey Neal, former personnel chief of the Department of Homeland Security, and now a senior vice president at ICF, said few agencies know how to oversee the RIF process. they're going to find it fairly quickly that it's a lot harder to cut than it seems like it should be, Neal said. And to quote GOP USA, more than 200 years ago, Thomas Jefferson said of the federal bureaucracy, vacancies by death are few, by resignation, never. And you know what? That's truer today than in Jefferson's time 200 years ago. You might ask yourself why. Here's why. According to the Cato Institute, federal workers average $123,160 a year in pay and benefits, compared to $69,901 in the dreaded private sector, $123,000 to $70,000. Isn't that incredible? That's a 76% income gap between the two sectors, up from 39% just 2 decades ago. So those who earn the most do the least. And these fat cat federal employees wonder why Americans voted Trump in to clean up this swamp. So let's talk about how this bill can help drain the swamp in a most efficacious manner, so we don't have to go through that horrible, complex process of reduction in force. We'll just fire them all by not paying their taxes. I have a link to a copy of this bill on our action page today, so you can read it in full, see how simple it is. The Tax Accountability Act allows federal department heads to finally fire employees who are evading paying their taxes, and in some cases requires it. It does not affect military members. The bill only applies to civilian federal employees, private contractors, and grant recipients. The bill does not affect people who are actively working with the IRS to pay off a tax debt, or someone who was just surprised with a big tax bill just this year. But the bill is targeted at federal workers, contractors, and grant recipients who owe $10,000 or more and who are making no effort at all to pay it back. Under this bill, federal contractors and grant recipients who have delinquent tax bills cannot even reapply for contracts, jobs, or grants. So it really hurts them, and it really is a great inducement to pay their taxes. The reason why most Americans go out of their way to pay their tax bill is because we know there are consequences for us if we don't. But public sector union members don't have to play by these rules. They don't have to play by any rules. They've been allowed to skip out on paying their taxes, and they know they can't be fired for it. The American people live in fear of the IRS, and yet federal employees get a free pass. Federal employees and contractors skip out on $8 billion a year in taxes. Nothing's done about it. That's money that doesn't make its way into our Social Security system or any of the government-provided services. Well, it's time to change this, so here's how you can help. Go to our action page today and send personal letters to Congress, starting with a House Oversight Committee. Demand passage of H.R. 396, the Tax Accountability Act, so that federal agencies can fire workers with delinquent tax bills. That'll light a fire under a lot of them. Maybe we'll get some work done. We're not going to let these public sector labor unions walk all over us anymore by protecting federal workers who cheat the taxpayers all the time. Bob Mallory will have instructions on the next screen to let you know how you can get to our action page, so stay tuned. This is Charles Benninghoff signing off and wishing you freedom, fulfillment, and God's many, many blessings.
If you're on our action page on our website, use the form next to the video screen to select a program and send personal letters to Congress. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, click the icon appearing now to find the link to our action page, or check the video's description to find the link. Speak out today.